It's time for Donald Trump's L's for the month. That's right. It's been a month of legal wins for the people, losses for the Trump administration. And normally I try to do these things once a week, but life has been lifing. The news cycle has been explosive. I've lost my way. Rather than just focus on legal, I kind of went off on tangents and covered some of the elections. And while that's been happening, the cases have been stacking up. So I'm here today. I'm going to give you a wrap up. Now, this is a brand new introduction actually to the full L's for the month. So this video is going to be pretty long. So grab some tea or coffee or your drink of choice. Have this playing in the background. Listen to 2x to 3x if you don't have the luxury to just listen to the entire video, or chop it up, whichever one you need to do. But it's going to be a good one. And this is a brand new introduction to the video that I filmed over a week ago. By the time I finished filming that video and started editing it, we got 4 more wins for the people. So I did an addendum to that and tacked it on, which you're going to see at the end of this video. This intro is because we have yet another win that I think I need to share. The reason why I want to share this most recent win that actually came yesterday, Wednesday, November 12th. Today is Thursday, November 13th, is because this latest win encapsulates what I believe is the nexus, is the thesis, is the theme of the Trump administration legal cases and administration just generally from January 20th, 2025 to next week is going to be November 20th. So this full 11 months of his reign of terror on the United States, on his attempted authoritarian dictatorial coup and dismantling of our representative democracy as we know it. This case that I'm going to tell you about in a second, I know you like to get on with it, is representative for several reasons. After I share the case, I'm going to tell you why it's representative. All right, now here it is. Yesterday, a judge in Chicago, United States District Court Judge Jeffrey Cummins, issued several orders essentially telling the Operation Midway Bliss, which was a campaign by the Department of Homeland Security's Immigration Custom Enforcement Division, which is ICE, and it's the Customs and Border Patrol, which is CBP, descended upon Chicago, and from September 9th or so until recently, I heard news that they're leaving, essentially raining terror. They're not going to the gang neighborhoods. They're essentially just over-policing and terrorizing citizens of Chicago purposefully for no damn reason. And this is why I say it's an epidemic. Every single thing they've done is going to be unwound because there is a consent decree called the Castañon-Nava Consent Decree in 2022. It limits ICE and Customs from making arrests simply out of fear that the suspect might escape before a warrant could be obtained, because the conditions in which you can grab someone and detain someone is you think, like, in order for me to get a warrant for this person, it's going to take some time, but I think this person is going to flee, so I can detain them. Now, that consent decree says that doesn't apply in Chicago. And what happened was ICE told falsely the agents and the folks that decree was dissolved last summer. It was not dissolved. It's in effect, which means that you cannot just detain people in hopes of without a warrant. And that's a way of just getting people based on their race and their ethnicity, where they're working for, with no warrant whatsoever, and then do a fishing expedition and try to figure out later on if they're here unlawfully. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's backwards. You're supposed to go get the warrant, identify a specific person, based on what you have information, go get a warrant signed by a judge before you go after that person. So they've been abusing that. So based on that, the judge says, you know what, 600 people who've been detained, ICE has said 3,000 people they've arrested. So they've identified about 600 folks that this consent decree violated their Fourth Amendment right against search and seizure. And immediately, this judge says, release 13 people. The 13 people they say they know were being held in violation of the order. And it's a court order from 2022. It's still in effect, and it's going to possibly release to thousands of people. So the judge said by a certain time, by next Wednesday, they want the folks released. They want a notice by the name, the person, what they're held for, and all the details and information about who's detained. The government was able to show out of the 600 or so, maybe 12 or 13 of those are actually flight risks and should be retained. So the judge was like, fine, if you identify those people, keep those. But notice that 12 or 13 out of 600. So there's 600 people they just rounded up that they have on this fishing expedition that violates that consent decree. And so that is a win for the people for the most part. I'm going to quote Mark Flemings, an attorney for the National Immigration Justice Center, just says that I think it would show the whole operation for the last 2 months, the terrorizing of our neighborhoods, the brutalizing of people here has been unlawful. And that's what it's going to show. It's going to show that all of this, all the tactics of Mr. Bovino, which is Greg Bovino, and all the tactics of ICE have been unlawful and a vast majority of arrests. That's what it's going to show. And if they plan to come back, they'll have to abide by these court orders going forward. Otherwise, they cannot come out following the rules. A lot of the folks who filed lawsuits against the Trump administration say they violated the Administrative Procedure Act, which is the minimum, says executive agencies, before you do anything that's going to be disruptive, that's going to change the rules, to change everything drastically, you have to go through a certain process that includes a notice to the public, a comment period, inviting the public to make comment, and then you have to back up the reasons why you're going to do this based on stats, facts, researches, data, analysis, expert opinions. They don't do that. They're acting purely on culture wars. They've identified certain sanctuary cities they want to attack, certain communities, trans communities, diversity communities, people of color, black people, the elite, institutions, research institutions, clean energy, environment. They've identified these as culture reasons. You cannot govern by culture, because what happens when you govern by culture is you disrupt a lot of progress that's great for the good of the entire country. And just because you don't agree culturally, that's not how the government works. It has to be based on more than just vibes and feels and your emotions and just you're strictly feeling like, I don't like that. That's not how it works. That's why, and that's because they do this. That's why this entire Operation Midway Bliss is going to be for naught. You've arrested 3,000 people. You're going to have to release most of them. You're going to keep the few criminals, but instead instead of going after the folks who like you identify that aren't here, that you need to arrest, you just went on a fishing expedition, terrorized kids, put guns in the faces of 17-year-olds, pepper sprayed little children, just terrorized communities. They started off by going into putting a helicopter in that black building, taking those kids, zip tying them, essentially just terrorized Chicago just for the sake of terrorizing them for culture wars. And the judges are saying you did all that shit for nothing. Let all those people go free. 3,000 so far. We can identify the 3,000 you detained. 615 we know you've already violated. They're all going to have to go, and it's a violation decree. So you violate the law doing this stuff in violation. By the time the courts catch up and say this was a violation, undo all this shit, they've already damaged people. They're already terrorized. They've already created the pictures or whatever the hell they want they're doing to justify this nonsense. And that's what we have. We have a system of administration that's just terrorizing people, and that's all this is. And so so that's why I say this case is an example of that. Every single thing you'll see, every single time you see a win, is because they do not follow the law. They get sued, and then the judges say, yes, this violates the Constitution, this violates the Administration Procedure Act, violates the Posse Comitatus Act, this violates the Alien Enemies Act, this is not a right application of this law, you violated this consent decree, you're just violating all of the laws. And the judge is like, so every single thing we have to undo and unwind. And this goes to people who say there's no accountability. If they do listen, and they do eventually, say get the hell out of Chicago and release these people, which they have released people, then that's accountability in terms of releasing. The trauma's there, the impact is there. It's going to take a while to fix some of the things. It's going to take a while to build the trust again. That's no doubt. I'm not saying that's not the case. But what also is true is that it at least unwinds them. It at least returns us whole for the most part, as best as we can. So that is the level of accountability, and that's what this is. At the end of the day, it's going to be a waste of time. It's going to be just terrorizing by torture, and the courts are going to unwind all that stuff. So it'd be a colossal waste of time. Every single thing from January to November. That's the lesson there. All right, time for the video. Let's get going. It's time for Donald Trump's legal L's for the month. It's been a while. This is a series I try to do when I share with y'all the wins that the people have had against the Trump administration in courts and the losses of the Trump administration in courts, to give you a sense of hope. Now, I kind of got lost in the fray between election just yesterday, and life is lifing, and so I fell off the wagon. But here I am. There's so much to go through, so let's get started. The first one is we have a final decision in the case where the Trump administration tried to take away infrastructure funding. Department of Transportation wanted to penalize the quote-unquote sanctuary states or cities. These are states and cities that do not cooperate with the federal government's attempts to mass deport, because deportation is under the purview of the federal government. The states don't do that. And so we have certain states, like my state, for example, that give people who are not here documented without quote unquote papers, driver's license, because we realize if they are driving anyway, and if they get in an accident, they're more likely to leave if they don't have any sort of licensing. So we're going to give them license. And we realized DACA recipients they didn't ask to be here. So why should they be denied the opportunity to get a Pell Grant, to get an opportunity to go to school? So we let them go to school. So we have laws because we recognize the humanity in people. And for that, the Trump administration attempted to punish. So what happened earlier on, just really quick background, I think this is important. The Trump administration has decided they're going to rule on culture wars and do so in a way where violating the the balance of power. Congress allocates funds. So Congress had previously allocated funding and grants to clean energy projects, to folks to do diversity inclusion, to anything that's related to like helping people, the Meals on Wheels, marginalized communities, support. So they decided on a culture basis, if you have done a grant, if you've done anything that falls in line with things that are considered Democrat ideals or programs, so clean energy, inclusion, diversity, anything that's a culture where they've either taken back the grants, which are already allocated from Congress, which is against the law, or they changed the law, or they're revoking people's rights to be here, and they're not following process. And to think about the United States government is 254 years old. One of the things that the previous Congresses back in the 50s did is they say, you know what, when we build these laws, we don't want any crazy administration like this one here to come in and uproot it. If you want to uproot or change anything, you have to build a thorough record. That thorough record includes notice and comment to the public. You need to have data. You need to have facts. You need to have research. You have the sticks. You have to have experts. You present that with the public, and you give a notice, propose a new rule change, and then you let the public know and you accept comment. Of course, they didn't do that because on day one, he just started uprooting, issuing executive orders that don't follow those rules at all. So that's why most people have challenged the Trump administration, and the challenges of coming from those groups that they've identified in a culture war are the enemy. So people of color or anyone who support people of color, migrants, immigrants, the federal civilian workforce, because for some bizarre reason, the Project 2025 people thought that during Trump's first term that there were civilian employees that worked in the government that didn't let him go carry out his agenda because they followed the law, and they were like, we're going to just get rid of those people. So that's why they hate federal government. And then they try to get rid of inspector generals. In the United States government, each department, we have these independent agents that serve across different administration. Their job is to make sure there's oversight. So the Office of Special Counsel, the Merit System Protection Board, is to go between the federal government workers, civilian workers, and the management. The special counsel oversees things. The inspector generals in each department make sure there's no waste, fraud, and abuse. Because Donald Trump administration knew they wouldn't come in and be abusive, just put sycophants who are unqualified and just crazy, and just do all sorts of stuff that exceeds his authority and throw away the Constitution in order to implant this Christo-fascist like the government. In order to do that, they needed to just like go in blazing and do all these things. So they've already identified the crosshairs on those communities. So organizations and groups representing those communities, including the union groups representing federal employees, the migrant groups like CASA, and various groups representing the immigrants. You have Democracy for Democracy Docket representing just general like FOIA, just democracy and dismantling. You have CREW, the Council of Responsible Ethics in Washington. So you have these nonprofit groups, and then you have the state's attorney generals, because again, they're trying to punish the blue states that are sanctuary states, because Donald Trump's only thing he's doing is immigration. That's it. So every other thing that the government does, they're not doing that. The Department of Justice have dismantled the Civil Rights Division. They're not doing crypto. They're not looking at child trafficking. They're not doing anything. The FDA is not working. Nothing in the government is working. All they're focused on is deporting people. That's it. That's Donald Trump's agenda in a nutshell. That's it. And then his tariff policy, and that's it. He came in, he had two things. I'm going to issue tariffs and I'm going to deport people. That's it. So he might have promised these things, but he doesn't know how to do these things, and he's not doing those things. And that's why his administration is a failure. But anyway, I digress. And this video is brought to you by my I Digress. Oh God, it's kind of dirty. My I Digress cap. And I have an I Digress sweatshirt that you can get if you're watching this on YouTube below. If you're watching this on Instagram, I'm going to put it in my in my what is it, the stories, the highlights of my Instagram. If you're watching this on TikTok, it's linked in the link in the bio. If you're watching this any place else, go to jjlegal.com, because I'm going to digress. Anyways, that's in the digression. So that is, in a nutshell, that's background you needed to know for what's been going on. And so what happened is, as he's been doing these power grabs, the federal district court judges that get these cases that are filed on behalf of these nonprofit groups, states attorney generals, and the unions representing the groups and companies and entities that Donald Trump's administration has put on this crosshairs and its cultural war, have the district court judge sees that they're overreaching. The sees that they're not following Administrative Procedure Acts. The sees are violating the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. They sees that he's disrupting the balance of power, that he's taking over funding and agricultural allocations, appropriations that Congress has already done from a previous administration, even Donald Trump's previous administration, and they see that he is not doing the following process. And so the district court judges, what they say, what we're going to do is pause. It's this thing called preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order. What that does is say, I see that this is unlawful, and ultimately you're most likely going to win. And I see the harm. If we don't pause this, people, probation employees, going to lose their jobs, and they're going to get kicked out of their house, and they can't feed and pay their bills. If we don't pause this, a family member or if someone's here legally and lawfully is going to get deported to a third party. We can't have that. If we don't pause this, then the grant funding for research is going to stop. If we don't pause this, the food's going to sit on the tarmac and spoil. So because if we don't pause this negative, illegal, unlawful action of the Trump administration through this stupid executive order, people are going to be irreparably harmed. And the balance of those interests of those people oversees the interests of the government that's just trying to just be disruptive and chaotic. And you're likely to win. So that's how it normally works out. And so that's how it normally works out, and that's what's been happening. But what we saw and we've seen this summer is the Trump administration, once they get stopped from doing their lawful thing, they run the Supreme Court. And unfortunately, the 6 conservative justices in the Supreme Court have been telling the federal district court judges, we're going to lift your pausing, meaning we see you stopping them and we don't want you to stop them. So we're going to issue what's called a stay. The stay essentially is saying that we're going to now let you stop the Trump administration from being disruptive. We're going to let the Trump administration continue to be disruptive because we want the executive power. We believe in executive authority. We believe he's allowed to carry out his agenda, and leave him alone. Let him carry out his agenda. And if after the case is done, and that's why they pause it, because you can imagine the process of in order to if the cases, go through a case, it's long. You have the deposition, you have exchange of documents, you have discovery, which means you're exchanging answers, you have hearings, you have all sorts of things, and it's a long process. What I'm seeing right now with the issues, what I'm talking about now, and a lot of the cases in the past time I did the Legal Elster Week and this one and going forward, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes. Now we're getting in the final orders. The pauses, the temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions was something that the courts were doing earlier on in the administration to stop their unlawful actions so it doesn't impact people while the cases continue. And the Supreme Court says, no, let the case continue. So now the cases are being done. You're getting the final orders. The one last sports analogy that I've used that might help you, because I know this is kind of be confusing. The sports analogy I've used is for people who know football or any sport that has a referee, and there's a foul on the play. And when there's a foul, the line judge, the judge that's right there, or the referee that's right there who sees it, blows the whistle. Then after they blow the whistle, you may have other referees that are not around come in and they review it to see if it's proper. If that was a proper call. And then, so what the line judge, the referee is a federal district court judge. The judges that, then the process is like we all looking at it and deciding. That's the cases. So the Supreme Court has been like the owner's box or whatever. The folks in the tower above look down and they see down on the play, it's pause. The Supreme Court is saying the referee, we're not going to let the referee pause this order. We're going to let the game continue to play while they review this to see if it's a proper foul. So they're looking at the cases, they're looking at it, and they're determining it. While they're determining whether it's right or not, the people in the tower above, which is the Supreme Court, says let the game play. And so the game playing is let them deport the people, let them claw back the funding, let them fire the people. So all those things are impacting people negatively. But ultimately, when they're done, and that's what's happening in this first case, Then after they're done, then the Trump administration has authority after it's finished, then an appeal, and then it's going to go up in the Supreme Court on substance. And then the Supreme Court can say whether it's right or wrong. They're not saying it's right or wrong. They're just saying stop. Don't stop them right now. Let them continue, because more likely we don't know if he's going to win. So when we see it, when it comes back up to it, we'll decide. And so anyway, so that's what's going on. So the first win, I needed a whole 10 minutes to explain that. The first win is one of those cases. Chief Judge John McConnell in Rhode Island, the states has come to him and said that Department of Transportation is trying to stop funding for infrastructure projects related to fixing a bridge, related to like renovating the subway system, related to fixing this airport. They're taking those funds away because they say these sanctuary states or sanctuary cities are doing what's called like they have these laws that protect migrant communities, or we my state Maryland, like I said, will give you a license in case you get in an accident. We'll giving DACA recipients, we're letting them go to college at our state universities because they didn't come here, and we're not going to participate, and we don't have to because 10th Amendment. So what the court said, we're vacating the immigration enforcement condition, the ICE condition that the Department of Transportation tried to impose on states, essentially saying you can't do that, and he says they don't have the statutory authority. The Department of Treasury Treasury can't do that, and then it violates the spending clauses, because if you're going to block it, it has to be related, and it can't be tangentially related. It's like, why are you taking away this grant? Is it because they didn't spend the money? Is it because they don't need it? No, you're taking it away because they're not participating in immigration. It has nothing to do with it. There's no relationship to the purpose of the funding, and it violates the Administration Procedure Act because you didn't justify this new condition of saying you have to immigration enforcement as a condition on getting us a grant. If that's fine, you want to do that, but you have to create a proposed rulemaking. You have to present the data and the facts, and you have to collect information. You have to go open it up for notice of comment, and then when you're done, you have to have a reason analysis, and then you can do it. Because if you don't do that, it's called arbitrary and capricious, and it violates the Administrative Procedure Act. And so she didn't do the proper process. You can't do this. If you want to do this, that's fine. Go through the proper process. So that's what Judge McConnell says, and that's the end of that. That's the first win. So if they want to appeal that to the Court of Appeals, they're going to lose. If they appeal to the Supreme Court, they should lose again, but who knows? So that's the first one. The second time, the National Association of the Deaf and the deaf individuals sued the Trump administration for failing to provide interpreters during the press briefings. In their lawsuit, they also asked for a small screen, and they asked for interpretation. The Trump administration said a couple of things. One, they said they didn't want to share. Trump didn't like sharing the space with another person. Two, they also said that they provide the transcripts, and there is there's another relay service so people can read it. The thing about it is, what the NAD countered is that that's not real time. It requires the transcripts is after the fact, and people deserve while they're watching it with everybody else to see its information. So the judge in that case decided, yes, you're absolutely correct, and it's determined just recently that they didn't extend it as to the first lady and the vice president and the second lady, but as to the president and the press secretary for now. They have to provide a sign language interpreter. And they said that by not having it, it's a violation of the American with Disabilities Act and a specific provision related to executive. So that's a win. So after 3 days of testimony and reviewing 750 exhibits, Judge Karine Emigralt in Portland blocked the Trump administration once again, until November 7th at least, from sending in troops into the city. She says that while the federal government does enjoy, discretion as to using their troops, it cannot belie the facts. And she said, just looking at the facts on the ground, it doesn't look like if there's anything that requires the troops to be sent there. There's I shared before in social media, there's between 30 and 100 protesters, and the local police force, even, undercover, has said there's nothing there. So anyway, and then she said there's also 10th Amendment, the states can manage on their own. And the law that allows Donald Trump to come in says it needs to be a full out rebellion. And it's just not there to deploy and federalize National Guard troops. She said it just isn't there. So this is a preliminary injunction. The case continues, but for the most part, I think ultimately when it's done, she's going to determine there was no invasion, there's no rebellion, and the regular people on the ground can manage what's there. So it's not going to succeed. And yeah, that's that. As I predicted, after I filmed this segment, ultimately, the judge actually came out with a final decision blocking the Trump from sending troops altogether. So that's a win. Did he just give up? I've said this before. Donald Trump abuses federal laws that gives him an emergency to do things like send in troops. It's something the Congress normally has to do, things related to war, or to make spending at the border, spending however he wants to spend, the tariffs. Congress does this tariff. So he's doing all these things using emergency laws that they're available if there's an actual emergency, if we're at war, and none of those things exist. So it doesn't make sense. And so that's why he's getting pulled back. All right, next case. So Elon Musk is going to jail. The United States government has until December 15th, I think, to share the extent to which he has top secret clearance. The New York Times in September, I believe, had asked for this document according to Freedom of Information Act request. The government denied and hemmed and hawed, and they said for privacy reasons they can't provide it, to which the New York Times promptly showed them Elon Musk's own social media tweets when multiple times he said he has top secret clearance. He bragged and boasted about it. Now, one of the things I often share is that the Trump administration, its officials, Tom Homan, Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem, Trish McLaughlin, Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, all the surrogates, Scott Bessent, they all go on TV and they make these claims, and they're talking to the MAGA base, whether through tweets, through Truth Social, or through Fox News. And a lot of times the things they say legally conflict with what the Department of Justice attorneys are arguing on the behalf of the government in front of judges. And what happens is the plaintiffs or the petitioners in these cases will just sit there and wait and screenshot, record, and then send. We're seeing that happening with the in Chicago and Portland, with the border security and ICE agents saying one thing and then being stopped or having a order from the judge to do certain things, and then they're saying something different. Donald Trump's saying something on Truth Social that conflicts in terms of the SNAP case with what the Department of Justice and the USDA is saying in the court cases. So in this example, Elon Musk has, shot himself in the foot. And I've said before he's going to jail because he's in violation of a law. Section 18 USC 208, United States says that if you're going to be a special government employee, you have to fill out a conflict of interest form. Now, the president can waive your conflict. However, even if they waive it, you're still not allowed to work on any matters which you can have a direct financial interest. As we know, Elon Musk was cutting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and other agencies that actually directly impact him and his businesses. And he was a government contractor. So by that law, he's subject to up to 5 years in prison and fines for violating that, for acting on those matters despite the fact that there was a conflict. They tried to shape-shift what he was called. I think they said he was a special advisor. But as a special advisor, you're not allowed to do the type of cutting. And then also, the type of things Elon Musk was doing violates, there's this apportionment clause of the United States Constitution that says the Senate must approve, and you must go before the Senate and they must ratify and vote on you. So Elon Musk was doing cabinet level cutting, independent, to do what other cabinet level folks can do, but he did not get approved by Congress. So there's various different reasons why Elon is going to jail ultimately. Now, the statute of limitations 5 years. As possible, Donald Trump on his way out can pardon Elon. So now that they're fighting, I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see as the world turns. So it looks like Garcia's case in Tennessee, where the Trump administration was so mad that they had to bring him back because the Supreme Court said bring him back. They decided to go find a traffic stop that he had in 2022 and convince the prosecutors in Tennessee to accuse him of human smuggling. 2 counts of human smuggling, and the case fell apart because Kilmar was like, they just made that up. So he was able to clear the hurdle of saying it's vindictive prosecution, and the judge was like, okay, Waverly Crenshaw was like, yeah. So the government has to produce evidence that it was independent. The government doesn't have any independence evidence, and the judge had on the stand the prosecutor and asked the prosecutor, did you know of this information before? Like, how is this random? And then Kilmar Briggle's lawyers had said that in 2022, there was 1,000 people had traffic stops. Of those 1,000 traffic stops, maybe 300 turned into actual cases. Of those 300 cases, they all got dispensed of the hearing, whatever, paid, fined, whatever happened to them within the year. Only one case didn't get brought for prosecution until 3 years later, this guy's case. When the judge asked the prosecutor, you said you did this independently, you said you had nothing, and clearly for something that far off, you're trying to say you didn't communicate. The judge didn't buy it. That the prosecutor had no communication or pressure from Pam Bondi's Justice Department in D.C. to bring this case, to indict the guy. And then, like I said, the witnesses were two jailbirds. One of them, they had pulled out of prison in exchange for his testimony. The other one is the relative. Both of them were in prison for human trafficking. Both of them had been deported, one 5 times, the other 2 times. So they're not credible. And then the story was that this guy, Kilmar, was going back and forth for 120 hours per week, going back and forth between a full-time job that they say between Texas and Maryland, and sometime with his kids. And she was just like, physically, that's impossible. That's why the magistrate judge who reviewed it said, Barbara Holmes was like, I don't buy this. This doesn't look credible. So I'm letting this guy go. And he initially was released on bond. Kilmar chose to stay because he was scared he was going to get deported. But in the event, the judge was like, okay, so you have to show evidence that it was not vindictive prosecution, and the government has not shown it. They say that they just don't have any information. So in which case, recently, Kilmar Burger Garcia's lawyers was like, well, you need to dismiss the case, because if it's vindictive prosecution, you can't prosecute me. So they have to prove, we have to do the vindictive prosecution hearing first. If they're not willing to participate by showing evidence on the record that it was independent, which they don't have any, then we have to just dismiss the entire case. So forget the hearing, because they had a deadline. They didn't produce any documents. The hearing was supposed to be November 4th and 5th, which was yesterday, and today is Thursday, so yesterday and Tuesday, and the government produced nothing. It's like, what are we going to have a hearing for when you don't produce your side so we can rebut? And yeah, the case is falling apart. It was stupid. It was just based on nothing. And then the judge had issued a gag order, and they had said, we can't not speak. We can't control we can't control our people from not speaking. Yes, you can. Tell Trisha McLaughlin to shut it. She can't possible. She's always compromising the government's cases because she goes on social media and just says all sorts of nonsense. Pam Bondi too. Pam Bondi sent a tweet out saying that he was a human trafficker, and he's not even charged with human trafficking. Trafficking and smuggling is 2 different things. And you're the Department of Justice Attorney General saying these things. Anyway, that case is going to be dismissed most likely. I'll keep you updated. They're so inept. They're so unqualified. Back to Chicago after 8 hours of emotional, gut-wrenching testimony from people who were on the ground protesting when they were assaulted, tear gas, pepper sprayed, pepper bombed by the Border Patrol agents. The judge banned the use of it, said she needs 2 days advance notice before you're going to use any pepper spray. I don't know. I think this should be banned. Oh my God. Anyway. 2 warnings before using riot control weapons, and the agents restricted from using force unless it's objectively necessary. I think they should be allowed to use a period, because they've already shown that they're abusing. This is what's supposed to be ordered. They said Judge Ellis is going to order this restrictive use of force against peaceful protesters in the media because it violates the constitutional rights. This preliminary injunction came in response to a lawsuit. But here's the thing, they're not paying attention. So I think she needs to throw them in jail. I don't understand how many times you want to tell somebody don't do it and they're going to do it anyway. They don't care. They don't respect this woman. So, anyway. One witness says, I get really nervous because it just feels like I'm not safe. She's a youth organizer for the Chicago suburb of Cicero. And I question my safety when I go out. They played a 5-hour deposition of a private interview of senior Border Patrol agent Greg Bovino, where he defended agents' use of force and dodged questions about Border Patrol tactics in the nation's 3rd largest city. Well, that's just an update. I think she should ban them altogether. And the reduction in force case in front of Judge Susan Ilston in San Francisco, District Court Judge, a Department of Justice attorney literally said that American people voted for Donald Trump because they like his catchphrase, you're fired, from The Apprentice. And the judge was like, what the fuck? Well, she didn't say that, but was like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. Anyway, she granted the preliminary injunction blocking the reduction in force, doing a shutdown because there's no one to do the shutdown because the government's not operating. That's just crazy that you're trying to fire people and reduce force during a shutdown. Like, how cruel. Anyway, I thought that was crazy and humorous. And then the judge, it's kind of like there's another case where the Department of Justice lawyers were saying all sorts of talking out the side of their neck, and the judge was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Well, I'm sorry, I'm new here." And that's the thing. That's all that's left. They've driven out, like, there was a report that said they've driven out over 500 career veteran prosecutors that know what they're doing, that's been working through Department of Justice for years for administration after administration, and they just drove them all out. So they just left with just like dodo birds arguing stupid stuff like that, like saying goofy shit in front of judges. Like, I did a skit. I always bring back to my skit I did a little while ago, where in the skit I said there's three types of lawyers left. And this was early on. It was like the one that was leaving. They were like, "Oh shit, I'm leaving." There was the ones that just didn't know what was going on because they just got put on the case and they were thrown in there to argue the indefensible, and they don't know what the Trump administration is doing. It's just chaos, and so they're just unprepared. And then the final one was the dipshits. The ones were just like saying Article 3 judges can't tell us what to do. Like they didn't graduate from law school. Like they didn't pass the bar. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's like basic con law 101. And so what's the precise number of agencies and employees that have been let go by the administration so far to date? Counselor, the media reports and your declaration conflict. Which one should I be paying attention to? I'll find out, and then I'm going to tell you when I find out. Article 3 judges don't have to tell us what to do because we Trump. Judge on. Actually, are you ready to present? I already put in my leave to go. My leave somebody is going to be. All right, cool. So that's all that's left. The people who've left already, the people who were clueless at first either got fired or left. And so it's just the dipshits left at Department of Justice arguing this nonsense. I'll take it as a win, though, that they can't fire them during the reduction of force. And we'll figure out what's going on after, one day at a time. I'm so sorry for federal workers. I'm so sorry. Ugh. Speaking of vindictive prosecution, so Letitia James and James Comey have filed for the vindictive prosecution hearing in their prosecutions, and the standard to get it requires the government to exchange documents. And so when Letitia James lawyers asked for documents, the Trump administration said, "No, it's not up to us. The burden's on you. You're the one who's claiming we're vindictively prosecuted. It's too soon." So I'll tell you what happens in that case, but I suspect that it's going to get tossed, because the similar way how in the Kilmer Garcia case, where he won the high standard showing vindictive prosecution and there's a hearing, they never shown the documents to prove that they had actually been planning and plotting, and his prosecution was independent of the fact that the Supreme Court said they had to bring this guy back. They couldn't prove that, because all of a sudden within, if he had his traffic stop in 2022 and he was part of this they were like planning this, and it was like an ongoing investigation of human smuggling, and he'd been smuggling, it was his full-time job. One, if that was really the case, why didn't they use that when they were trying to deport him in the Maryland case all these months? They didn't use that. They didn't have that information. This comes up like just recently. And of all the people in 2022 who were pulled over for a traffic stop, all of their cases got dispensed of within a year. Only Kirmal is the only one that comes later, 2025. And then they don't it's clearly a vindictive prosecution. That's why that case is going to get tossed out. Similarly with this case here, like, they don't have the evidence. They don't have the proof that they've been like teeing this up for years and years and years. They haven't been. Donald Trump's tweets, it's going to get kicked out. This is a waste of time. And Lindsay Halligan is going to get thrown off the case as well. She's a prosecutor that did it without even asking Pam Bondi. She's signing off on stuff. She wasn't even properly impaneled. 3 different attorneys that Pam Bondi had listed as United States United States attorneys have gotten kicked off because she does this backwards, behind the scenes, like, retroactive nonsense that doesn't work. And so they've 3 lawyers, Alina Abba, Bill Alasaisi, I'm pronouncing his name right, but for the most part, they're getting kicked out, and Lindsay Halligan definitely would. And in the cases that got kicked out, they try to like make sure that the dubiously appointed AUSA, American, U.S. attorney, get someone else who actually is the AUSA that's properly impaneled to sign off on it. Lindsay Halligan, she's the one who signed off on it. Like, she wasn't even properly appointed, and she's signing off on their prosecutions and indictments. It's going to get kicked out. But anyway, I digress. But that's how they do things. They don't follow proper procedure. Here's some examples of how Donald Trump administration, they get kicked out of court because they don't follow the procedure. For probation employees, for example, if you want to fire a probation employee, it has to be on an individual by individual basis based on their performance. You can't say we're firing everyone who's a probation employee for failure for performance, because that's not how it works. And so that's why they sued, and that's why it was too late, but they won that case. For temporary protective status, if you, Department of Homeland Security, wants to claw back and revoke the temporary protective status for Nicaraguans, Afghans, Cubans, Venezuelans, Haitians, El Salvador, Guatemalans, whatever it is, it has to be, you have to give 60 days advance notice, and it has to be for cause. They didn't do that. No notice whatsoever, no cause. They're just revoking it. And so, of course, they get sued for doing that and get pushed back and lose. Another example of how they don't follow the proper procedure is then when you're trying to revoke grants. If you're going to revoke a grant for someone's already in a grant, which Lee Zetlin's doing, Russell Volt, they're trying to claw back grants based on cultural war basis. They're doing clawback grants if it's related to clean energy, if it's related to research related to like black sickle cell or diversity, anything that's like they figure out it's a culture issue. They're clawing back the grants, and they're just saying we're going to deny all of them. And each one will just sue. All you have to do is sue and say, no, it has to be on individual by individual basis. What's the individual basis? They never had an individual review. They just denied it for culture reason. And the judge will say, you can't do that. And that's happened in Harvard. That's happened in other cases. Each time they do that, you sue, you win, because they don't follow the proper process and procedures. They never do. So in the TPS status and the probation employees, whether it's clawing back grants, they just don't follow the process. You have to do notice. And similarly with the reduction in force, you have to do it, provide notice. It's like a whole process. They don't follow the process. They just like, we're going to just fire people. And that's why they lose every single time. And with the vindictive prosecution, you have to show the burden of proving that there's a basis for it. They don't have a basis for nothing. They just act first and figure it out later. And that, I think that's part of the Project 2025 thing, is that they know they're going to be sued, and they're just like, let's just do it and cause as mass destruction as possible. By the time the courts catch up to us, we've already done, the damage is already done. It's chaos. It's just Donald Trump's a chaos agent, and they're just doing chaos just for the purpose of getting chaos. I got a new phone. I got the iPhone 17 Pro. Right now, I'm filming this, and I have a professional camera, but I don't need to use it anymore because it's faster and easier with the camera. I have a 15. My 15 is acting up, and I need better quality. And after I get the 17 Pro has some more options, and I got a free upgrade. It's not really free because I'm going to continue to pay to extend the life of the contract. That's why I've been tethered to Verizon for years. Anyway, I digress. So, okay, I'm tacking on the end of this video because as I was editing the video, we had a death in the family, so an emergency. We had to travel to Canada for the funeral, and I told myself I was going to edit on the way, but I did not edit the video on the way. So because I delayed in editing, news continues to happen, and there's 4 more updates. So one of them is Judge Emergold in Portland issued her final declaratory ruling, because before, remember, it was a preliminary injunction, a temporary pause while the case continues, because as we all know, as I said before, case law can take a while to go forward while you're exchanging documents. You have people being deposed, you have people have to answer questions, you have some hearings. It's a process. So the final process, she said she did not see the information they alleged requiring military intervention. She says from what the evidence shows is that at the ICE facilities, the agents there and the police are fine with letting people come and leave. Though the protesters are not armed rebellion, they're not out of control. There's no need to deploy military troops. So that's a final order. So let them appeal that to the Supreme Court. I doubt they will, but it's kind of be like, you don't have the evidence. I don't know. This clown show, they don't care. They really don't care about whether or not they have evidence. They make up stuff. That's a video for another day coming forward. I'm going to do a video just going through all of the different ways they've lied, submitted false evidence, and false, just lied. That's a video coming soon. Look forward to that. Sarah Ellis, I'm just wishing she just needs to go ahead and throw Greg Bovino in jail because he lied. There was a video testimony, but he's saying that he just made up a bunch of lies on his video testimony. And even though they told the Sarah Ellis at the end of her order said no more use of, she's going to restrict their use of biological weapons if they continue to misuse it, not giving people two warnings, like 2 notice warnings before using it. She set up all these parameters, which I think is silly because I'm thinking at the end of the day, they don't listen anyway. And the only thing they listen to, potentially, I don't know why she's scared, is just a whole hold them in contempt, issue contempt orders, the issues of Greg Bovino. Let's challenge it. Let's have a showdown. You know what I mean? So anyway, so more and more from her, just telling them more things that they should not do, that they continue to violate over the weekend. Like on Friday, she has these orders, so you can't do X, Y, and Z. And by Saturday, they're doing X, Y, and Z. So I wasteless. Anyway, the other ruling is a judge filed. The American Federation of Government Employees says the Trump administration went inside people's private email inboxes and violating their First Amendment rights, made their outboxes say that the reason why they're not at work is because of Democrats, which is violation of, I'm sure, the ethics laws, but it's also against their First Amendment rights. There was a private civilian employees, what they tell people when they're not in the office, meaning their family members or friends, even though they're using federal facilities, it's up to them, it's their rights. You can't force them to blame the Democrats, which is stupid. So the judge ordered that stopped. Like it's not a temporary protective order, is not whatever. That's in the case. It's like you stop that, reverse that. They probably stop it. It's over now. But anyway, yeah. So that's one. As to the folks prosecuting James Comey, Lindsay Halligan, they did not present the grand jury's testimony what she presented. Remember, she indicted. She went forth to sign the indictment of Letitia James without telling Pam Bondi. So that's her first mistake. Her first mistake is accepting it. The second mistake is going on and filing her indictment without notifying Pam Bondi. Another attempt is she signed it. Here's the thing: Bill Elisi, Lena Baba, and then there's a third woman, I forget her name, all have been removed as people that Pam Bondi used to be attorney generals on a temporary basis for 120 days. It's a temporary basis. Otherwise, they have to go through a formal process. They don't have time because, again, remember when Pam Bondi came into office, she fired 20 people who helped Jack Smith. She just went on the firing spree. She closed out the Civil Rights Department. She closed out the department that looks after and investigates white collar crimes. She closed down and thinned out the folks who do child trafficking. She closed out the cryptocurrency investigations. There's no departments open at Department of Justice. It's all immigration all the time. That's it. They don't do anything else whatsoever. She thinned it out. And then people either left, they fired folks because of for Donald Trump's reason, or people just left because they didn't want to defend the indefensible. And then so the people left are sycophants, folks who just need the paycheck and just they're forced to stay there. They're just laying low until who knows whatever happens. So that's why it's a thinned out. And the people forefront, and I'll share this in another video, they say a bunch of stupid stuff online because they've never been given this job. They've never been able to prosecute other than a couple of them. And so anyway, that's why they're just saying stupid stuff. And anyway, it's a video for another day. So the fact that Lindsay Halligan signed it is not a good sign because Bill Lacey and Alina Baba, they were removed. But one of the things that saved the indictments from being tossed is because in those cases, they had someone else who actually was properly impaneled as the AUSA to sign it. So, but Lindsay Halligan, her dumb ass signed it. So more likely than not, there's so many bases for which Letitia James, the office is going to be tossed out, but this could be one of them. She's former Miss Colorado, and she was a real estate attorney. She's over her depth. She's made so many mistakes. She contacted the journalist at Lawfare, didn't say it was off the record, shared a bunch of grand jury information to her. She went and got attorneys from another states and stuff to come up. She made errors in indictment. She just lots of mistakes. And that's why you don't put someone with no experience. And Project 2025 said we're going to replace the career civilian experts in the government with loyalists. And this is what happens when you do that. You have loyalists that are bumbling fools. They compromise their own case because they don't know what the hell they're doing. So they've never done this before, and they just got the job. They've taken the job. They've proven their loyalty to Donald Trump, and that's it. Talk about you want to attack DI. I mean, you say DI is when you put people who are not qualified based on their race into jobs. What the hell is this? You're putting a bunch of unqualified sycophants in their positions, and they're stupid. They're not. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, so just a matter of time before she and gets and all the lawsuits and everything gets tossed. Jim Comey also is going to most likely win his vindictive prosecution claim, saying that he's vindictive prosecuted. The Trump administration is trying to hold back the documents, claiming that they don't have to share the documents. Same thing with Letitia James. She's also claiming vindictive prosecution. And part of that is we need to exchange it. If someone's saying you prosecuted me on vindictive basis, part of that hearing means releasing all the information you have, saying that you've been looking out for me, chasing me for a long time, and you have all this evidence, and you've been that doesn't exist. So that's why they can't produce it, because they're either trying to make it, fake it, or not. Here's the thing: Pam Bondi, even when in terms of trying to save these sycophants that she's placed in as attorney generals, she's doing retroactive signages and claims, kind of fix it after the fact. And the judges are not stupid; they can see you didn't have the basis for pushing these people in these positions, and you're just anyway. it's a hot mess. So those are the updates that happened after I filmed this video. I just wanted to add them on there. So the next time I do illegal L's, I'm going to see if I can try to do illegal L's for just 1 week. I did have a plan for doing it. This is just a side. I said that I'll just do legal L's as they come along and just do them as one-off. And at the end of the day, I'll string them together. I wasn't able to do that because it's just too much stuff going on, and I just lost track. But I'm going to try to go back to that method, because in that maybe I'll be able to update them more regularly. Anyway, so that's the update. This video has been super long. It's probably 40 minutes. Thank you for watching it if you've gotten all the way through. And stay tuned for other videos. And if you watch this on YouTube, I'm going to put a playlist here for all the legal L's. This video should be on top of it, but then there's a series of L's. Why does that benefit? Because some people need to know that actually Donald Trump actually does abide, the administration does abide, albeit belatedly. They follow court orders, though they fight, they appeal, they slow to fund, they defund, they do all sorts of crazy stuff. But for the most part, they do abide by the Georgia's decisions. I don't know if that gives you comfort. It might not. Who knows? But anyway, so watch the playlist. Stay tuned. Share this account with other people, because that's what I do here. And it's this one-woman operation for the most part. I do have assistants, and I'm trying to be more organized and show up more regularly, including on lives, and reach out to people, and I'll work on that. But stay tuned. I'm just ironing out the kinks. This is relatively new. I'm 1 year into this shift and pivot, and you can see there's a lot going on. The news cycle is really rapid, but what I do here that I like, that people like, is there are a few people online that are not just showing doom and gloom, but actually showing wins. So that's what I try to do, actually amplify the wins and let you know, to reach and empower you. My Operation 2/3 campaign, which is a one-moment campaign to get people to like unseat at least 20 United States senators, Republicans, and several Republicans in the House, and to get a veto-proof majority. With a veto-proof majority, we can not only remove Donald Trump and his entire band of sycophants and just start fresh. With the veto-proof majority, you can also get a common sense gun control. You can get immigration reform. You can do a Supreme Court. You can actually pack the courts, because you can do that if you can. Would you get enough? I don't know. That's an option. There's a lot of options you can do. And actually, all the things that could have been and should have been done and sealed out to prevent what Trump is doing between the first and second term, get on it. There needs to be a think group or policy group, or a bipartisan, or some sort of expert group already assembled right now, identifying all the places Donald Trump is exploited and closing up those loopholes, legislating those loopholes and closing those loopholes. And also administratively, I think the Office of Management and Budget shouldn't be allowed to one man be able to seize funding. There needs to be a backdoor way for when they seize funding unlawfully, that there needs to be a backdoor way for someone who's nonpartisan, or someone at the Congress or something, to release funds. So it can't be given it to one man anymore, one person anymore who's crazy. Like that needs to be sealed off so that can be done again. So anyway, I think that's all the updates I have. I have more, but that's enough for now. JJ Legal, each one teach one. Share this video. Go to jjlegal.com and check out my merch. My case trackers. You want to keep track of the cases, just $8. Know Your Rights card, just $1. My merch, I have my caps, my shirts, like No Human is Legal. You can also get from jjlegal.com or the shelf, depending on where you're seeing this at. And yeah, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to put a playlist here. I'll watch my other legal L's and catch up, so you can feel good and know that we actually do have some wins, that Donald Trump doesn't